Evening, everyone. It's 5:35, and this is your closing comment for Wednesday, the 10th of November. Remember that tomorrow is actually Veterans Day, and the bond market, the futures may trade, but the cash market is actually closed, as I think most of the banks are. It's a federal holiday. Okay, so we started off the day with a bunch of news, some very good, some particularly bad. CPI, very bad, 6.2% year over year, the highest number, the record high number since 1990, over 3 decades ago. On the month-over-month number, we were plus 0.9% versus an expectation of 0.6%. I'm not going to go into the food and energy stuff because that's just stupid. Who doesn't eat or drive? On the other side, we had wholesale inventories up 1.4% for the week versus what was an up 1.2% last week. I have a feeling that some of this is being pulled forward on the basis of all of the supply chain issues, so anybody who can get goods is getting them. Oil inventories were up a million barrels, which doesn't seem like a whole lot, but was not expected, and I'll get to the oil in a second. And claims came out today instead of tomorrow because of that holiday, and initial claims were down 2,000 to 267,000, while continuing claims actually rose by 59,000 to 2,160,000, which is still a reasonably high number. Okay, so we had the big news today, RIVN, which was initially going to be a $50 IPO, moved up to the 72 to 74 area when they started to announce it. Then they priced it. Not only did they price it at 78, which was above that, it was initially 135 million, turned out to be 153 million. The stock opened at 106 3/4, traded up to about 112, back down to 105, all the way up to 119.46, which was the high of the day, and then fell all the way back to 95.20, which was the low of the day. The last trade in extended hours right now is 102.52. That's up 24.52 from the pricing, and that's a gain of 31%. We had kind of a rough day going in a lot of stocks, but SOFI, which has had some pretty decent activity lately, closed at 20.42, down $1.72 before reporting earnings, which were a big beat. The stock immediately traded up $3.50 to 23.70. The last is 22.78, up 54 cents, but that's still $2.35 above where it closed. Same thing with AFRM. AFRM has been under a little bit of pressure. Remember, this is the buy now, pay later. They have a deal with Amazon. The stock in the last couple of days came down from about 176 and closed at 133.53, down 24.25 today. The earnings came out as a magnificent beat, and the stock immediately traded all the way back to 176. The last here is 170.40, up 12.43 instead of down 24 and change. So instead of being down 7%, it's up almost 8%. Disney with a big miss. The stock closed 174.45, down 66 cents. I know Bob Chapek is going to be on with that idiot Kramer, who I'm sure will brown nose him to death. But the stock did trade from that 174.5 down to 165.10. The last there is 165.99, down $9.12 or 5.2%. Renovo RX, I mentioned this one this morning. It was about $14 and change. Pre-market in the real world, the high it could manage was $12.51, the low $7.70, the last $17.96, up $2.55 or 46%. This is a company that has a cancer drug for pancreatic cancer. And DoorDash with a big beat. This morning it was 220, up 28. It finished the day 214 and a quarter. That's up 22 and a quarter, 11.6%. Dow down 240, NASDAQ down 263, S&P down 38.54. The NASDAQ was the big loser, down 1.66%, but coming in right behind it was the Russell, down 37.71 or 1.55%. Transports down 67. What was interesting was that the VIX was again up today, but what was surprising today was that it's still pretty benign. Dennis and I were talking, and he seems to think that we're still a bit too complacent, and I tend to agree. Advanced declines on the NYSE were 2-1, on the NASDAQ were 2.5-1, both to the downside. Volume was a little lighter at 5.2 billion. The chart on the screen is the gold, which really looks great, but was a bit of a disappointment to me today. As I mentioned this morning, this area above 1837 here, 1833.70 there. We broke out of this flag. I'll show it to you on the weekly so you can get an idea of context. We came out of this flag. Even the low for the week is above this flag and looks very impressive. On a weekly basis, it's about 2/3 up on the range. On the daily basis for today, the thing that disappointed me was it was as high as 1870 and it finished 1848. So mid-range on the day, even though it was a big up day. But we've now come from 1758 to 1870. That's $112 in 5 days. We may pull back in here. I'd love to see it hold above this 1838, 1840, where I was calling it somewhere that it had to close on a weekly basis to the upside. As I mentioned before, the oil inventories came out, and there was a build, which was seemingly a bit of a surprise. And again, we failed at 85. Here's 85.41. Here's 84.88. Today's high, 84.97. Big move to the downside. This happened really more, not so much from the inventory number, but from the very bad results in the 30-year bond auction. The when issued market was trading about 6 or 7 basis points below on yield than where the deal actually got done. Rick Santelli, who usually sort of grades these things, didn't stop with the A, B, C, D, F. He said this was an H for horrendous. And so we closed actually on pretty close to the lows. The low was, low was 80.81. Bitcoin, after making another new high at 69,355, closed down 1550 at 66,075. Still a pretty good looking chart. I certainly don't begrudge it a little bit of a rest in here. We came right back into the support down here at 63,000. Again, it wouldn't surprise me to see this at through 70, probably closer to 75. The dollar was exceedingly strong. I have a feeling that that had more to do with the bonds, usually higher interest rates, which we had today for sure. Higher interest rates make more demand for the dollar. Here we go. This is a recovery high. I don't know if it's enough of a high to be looking at. Well, it went through the 200-week moving average. We were wedged between the 100 and the 200 here. We're slightly higher than this low, so it looks like this wants to go higher. I've pointed out this W, or double bottom here, every week for the past 4 or 5 weeks in my letter. In the charts with comments, it looks more like a short covering rally on the basis of the fact that the open interest continues to fall. Open interest here was 60,000 contracts. Open interest here is 35. That's cut almost in half, and that is a huge drop in open interest for any commodity. The bonds, as I said, were lower. They have been lower. Let me just pull that up so you can see. They were down 1 in 19/32, which is about 1 5/8 of a dollar. And as you can see, we were pretty strong and moving higher. And now we look to have reversed. This was a very tough area. I pointed it out at 164. The high here was 164.01. Today's low was 161.09. We closed 162.04. Would not surprise me to see, even if it's going higher, higher in price, lower in rates. Even if we're going to get a retracement of that, it wouldn't surprise me to see this 160, 160 and a half area. All right, everyone, there you have it. Today, in brief, relative brief, and I'll be back first thing in the morning. Have a good evening.